It's gonna be another hot, dry day. Get away from me, you buzzards. You ain't gonna get me that easy. I was born in the heat and I will die in the heat. The desert is my home. Don't know me? Oh. Hello, stranger. There have been words about you before you ever got here. And I don't like you. No, greenhorn. And I'll tell you why. We, as humans, we can choose to live in the heat. It's all good. Some of us thrive in the heat, like me. But I hear you've been feeding your cat kibble. Kibble. Ugh. Makes me want to hurt somebody. All that heat, all of that beautiful moisture just robbed. Stranger, you and me gotta have a talk. A very serious talk. You ready to sit down and listen? Good. Welcome back, everybody. It is your ever-loving cat daddy, Jackson Galaxy, here with you. And we're gonna start diving in today to what a lot of you guys ask about. And I've addressed it in the past, but maybe not in such a condensed way, if I do anything in a condensed way. But today we're going to talk about the beginnings of the way I see cat nutrition. And that would be, we're talking about the food, the bad, and the ugly. See what we're doing here? And today we're gonna start with the ugly. What I want to just dive right into is a big old bowl of dry food. I don't, and I don't want your cats to either. And what I'm going to describe today is why I think that dry food is by far the worst thing that we can feed our cats. It is also by far the most convenient thing that we can feed our cats. And back in the 50s, because before that it was just pretty much all cans, at least from the mass-produced variety. But as soon as dry food came on the market, kabang, just overtook that market in a hurry. And I think a lot of that is because of shelf stability and about ease of feeding. What is a cat? A cat is an obligate carnivore. Obligate carnivore means that they are distinctly built to only eat one thing, and that is meat. They're not grazers, they're carnivores. So when a cat eats prey, they're eating the bones, they're eating the muscle and the tissue and the fat and all that, and the moisture. So what we're doing in order to make meat, prey, into a nugget is pretty crazy. The first thing I want to talk about is how far away from the actual meat source dry food is. So the first step is you take the meat and you ground it up. And then it is cooked under very high heat and processed so it becomes meal. It's basically a powder. From the veggie standpoint, you got something like a pea protein or corn gluten. That's what happens when you just take it down to its very powdery basics. It's then fed into a massive mixer. Once it's in this massive mixture, supplements are added. It's then cooked again under a very high heat to turn it into a dough. Because I want you to imagine that the final sort of piece of this making of this nugget is almost like, you know, those little cake icing dispensers where you put the icing and you squeeze it and then it comes out like a little star shape and you can spell happy birthday, Chester. That's kind of what we're doing in a 10,000 pound way with dry food. So it's going from that dough and then it's going to get cooked again, and then it's going to come out in a, the shape that we want it to look like. That's what's happening here. Now we've got it in that shape. What are we gonna have to do now? That's right, you guys, we're gonna have to put heat to it again. Bake it under a very high heat in order to make it stay in that shape. And now, for the piece de resistance, once it comes out, it doesn't smell anything like meat anymore, that's for sure. It's just a thing. So what makes it so that our cats really want to eat it? Well, now we're gonna spray meat flavoring on it. We have now taken this piece of meat and put it through 4 different rounds of either cooking or just exposing to heat, baking, processing, 4 rounds of heat to get it into that nugget. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that for an animal who has survived for thousands of years, knowing exactly what they have to eat, and then you take that thing and you turn it into this thing, it's going to lose something, almost everything. Okay, so that takes us through the process, the ugly process of making dry food. Now, let's talk about what the natural intake for a cat is, because I keep talking about the raw cat, the ancestral cat, and what they would eat. Okay, so what would they eat? And whether it is a mouse or a rat or a bird or a cricket or anything else, each piece of intake that a cat gets from their prey would be mostly protein and about 8 to 9% carbohydrate. And that comes usually from the plant matter that would be in the prey's gut. So if you're going to hunt a mouse, the mouse eats grass, you eat the mouse, you're also eating grass indirectly. Now I'd like you to start comparing that to what the normal carb value is for dry food. From brand to brand, it could be wildly inconsistent, but up to 50% carb. One other thing we know about carbs in cats is that it greatly increases their glycemic index. Their blood sugar level will just spike every time they eat it. If you think about the fact that most cats who have free feeding of dry food will eat it at some point about 15 to 20 times a day, just nibbling on it, moving on. Every time, glycemic index, pa-pang, right? Blood sugar up. It gets crazier because even though carbs increase blood sugar output in cats, heating those carbs up increases the glycemic index even more. It's just a double whammy. They're not meant to eat carbs, and they're not meant to eat these crunchy, quasi-meaty carbs, so their blood sugar is just going kabang. If it's like you had a hyperactive child and you're giving them a buffet of Twinkies all day long, I mean, it's just a constant, and you don't know how to predict or help work with it as the day goes on because you don't know when the last time they ate, but you know that what they ate caused that spike. So there's that. The next thing I want to talk about is moisture. Cats are originally desert-dwelling animals. And that means that they had highly, super efficient kidneys. Most of their hydration, the majority of their hydration, approximately about 70 to 75% of their hydration comes directly from the meat that they eat. Dry food is literally dehydrating our cats, making them more dependent on drinking water. It's not till they get dangerously dehydrated that they will learn to rely on drinking water. So why would we do that? Because dry food is robbing cats of the hydration they so sorely need. We also see an uptick in things like crystals, stones, feline lower urinary tract disease, it's FLUTI, which is not a single disease, it's a collection of diseases that we call under a singular name. But there have been ties between dry food and the collection of crystals in a cat's bladder or kidneys, having to work those kidneys and that bladder, the whole system there, extra hard. And most of the reason is because there is no moisture in the diet. So these systems have got to just work in a way that they're just not used to working. We are asking their system to process meat in a way that it's not meant to work. And when we start going against nature to this degree, we wind up with obesity. So now we're going to talk a little bit about fat cats. One thing that I can tell clients of mine whose cats are big-boned, husky, as I was often called when I was a child, so I'm allowed to say it, but is, do you feed your cats dry food? And the answer is most of the time, yes. Either they feed them dry food and they have it out all the time, or they give them a lot of dry treats. One way or another, the dry devil is there to help make them obese. So we know, again, the cats have a low tolerance to carbohydrates. We're packing it full of carbohydrates, whether they're grain-free or not. Our cats are fat because they're eating dry food. If your cats were not eating dry food, then the chances of them being obese are much less. If you think about it, by and large, a cat who's living out there in the wild, doing nothing but hunting and eating, is probably not going to be diabetic, is probably not going to be obese, because their bodies are doing exactly what nature has meant for them, which is to hunt, catch, and kill, and eat. That's it. Now, I want to have one more thing that I talk about, and that is what happens when we feed dry food, by and large, is that we're also free feeding because it's meant to be grazed upon. And anybody who knows me, you guys know that I'm just not a fan of free feeding. When we free feed, we are forcing them into a reality they don't belong into, which is a grazer. They don't need to graze. Their bodies know what to do with that carnivorous information in the most unbelievable way, as I've been slowly outlining for you guys. I would ask you not only to reconsider feeding your cats dry food, but also to stop free feeding your cats. How does that work in a behavioral context? Well, that's for another day, but I can tell you this. You try asking your cat to do something for you, for your household, and having them not be at least partially hungry in the process. We know now what meat has to go through to get into being a nugget, what that nugget contains, and how generally, in my opinion, nasty it is for a cat's well-being, for their physical health. I would ask you to reevaluate and get it out of there. Just get it gone. There is no good reason for it except it's convenient. I'm not a nutritionist. That's not what I do by trade, but I would be an irresponsible cat daddy if I didn't go and consult with people who did know what they were talking about. And there are vets and feline nutrition advocates and all-around pet nutrition advocates that I trust greatly. And I will link to some of their work in the description below so that you can be able to do your own due diligence on this. Because if you agree or disagree, totally cool. Now go off and prove me right or wrong or whatever. It's not about me. It's about your cat. And I care about your cat. I know that you care even more than I do. They're your family. So do what you got to do. Let's start here. And we're going to have more information in the coming weeks about nutrition. But today, we talked about the ugly. So until next time, Greenhorn, this is your cat daddy saying all light and all love and all mojo to you.